So I think there's two sides of the media. I think they do report on what's happening with the Ramrod situation. They also report on maybe mistakes that are made. I think people need to know what's going on out there to protect themselves and to support each other.
Hey Scotty, welcome back.
How are you? Thank you.
Yeah, good, thank you. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself to the audience?
I'm Scott Bain, CEO of SaferCities,
Yeah.
enabling safety by connecting the world.
Awesome, love it. Today, we're going to kick into some CCTV misconceptions.
Yes.
And your thoughts on it, because you guys deal with surveillance and CCTV,
Yep.
That's what you do. But public, there's a lot of misconceptions around it, and the public
Yep.
is often concerned about privacy things.
Yep.
What would you say to quell some of these concerns?
Yeah, so privacy does come up. There's something out of the UK which we use in Australia and New Zealand and to a certain extent United States, and it's called fair expectation of privacy, or no fair expectation of privacy. So if we're all out on the street, if Stanley comes up and films Scott with his iPhone, puts it on YouTube, I might not like that. In fact, I probably wouldn't. Probably tell you off, but I can't really stop it because I'm in a public environment. If you can see me with your eyes, then there's no real fair expectation of privacy. So in terms of CCTV and public-facing environments, that's essentially what we're helping the community connect back to police to help them deploy better. And, unfortunately there is no fair expectation of privacy in a public place. It's just sort of the way it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see that there are any privacy concerns with that. It's a different story if the cameras are inside, and we never connect any of those up to the VGrid SaferCity platform for obvious reasons. But so I think probably all else I'd say on that is that I think we watch a lot of movies like Jason Bourne, Minority Report. I think the problem with some of those movies is that they create an impression that a whole lot of these systems are a lot better than they actually are in practice. And that's also part of the issue, right? They're actually not. They're quite simple. They're quite basic. So people shouldn't worry as much as as what they do based on movies that are fictitious.
Yeah. And I think you've told me this before about this fair expectation of privacy, and I think it is a real misconception that like if you're in a public space, that you have the right to not be filmed, but actually that's not the truth. It's
Unfortunately
just
not.
You're in a public space, and so we all have exactly the same set of expectations there, right?
Correct.
In terms of CCTV, how does it play into public safety? Like, how does it help?
Helps in a really good way. So there is a lot going out there at any one time. There are limited resources in public safety, and often, and we've been in the environment when we've heard 111, 000, 911 calls come in, and there are simply more calls coming in than there are public safety resources to deploy. So that visual information as a way of adding to the verbal description of what's going on definitely does help them prioritise better. We've seen it. We've heard the story. So I think one important thing that you'll often hear me say is that the police are not sitting there looking at thousands of cameras around a city. They have way better things to do, they're police. But if there was something going down that's not so good, the ability to see what's going on so they can work out their strategy and deploy better is just absolutely magic for them. And so that's how CCTV helps, and with public safety.
So essentially, the police are too busy actually solving or fighting crime to be watching CCTV.
Absolutely.
But when they need to make a decision on which thing they act on, that's where CCTV allows them to make a better decision.
And there's when the community want to share with the police, there's something we always say is, just because you're making your public-facing cameras available to police doesn't mean they'll ever look at them. In fact, they may never ever look at them. But if something does happen and they have to, then they can. So that's an important thing to also bear in mind.
Yeah, cool, great. Why do you think people think this way? Why do you think they assume the worst when it comes to CCTV?
I think because of the movies, and I think because of, I love a lot of people in the media, but I sometimes think some people in the media paint the perception of Big Brother. And if they actually went into some of the facilities, they would see that it's not like that at all. So it's I don't know. I think it's healthy to debate both views, but it's not as good as people think it is in
Yeah.
terms of the amount of resources and the amount of cameras and the ability of someone to actually look at all those.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone really has anything to worry about.
When you think of the positive stuff that CCTV's done in your line of work, what are some of the great positive stories that if we didn't have that CCTV, that couldn't have happened?
Yeah, there's been lots of story like we don't get to see exactly what's happening, and police are very good with privacy and not telling those stories. But we constantly hear from them, having access to those cameras for that particular event, whether it's a protest or something bad that happened downtown, absolutely made the difference in how we deployed and health and safety of our staff and health and safety of the public. So we hear it again and again, and we also hear it with response to police eagle helicopters and car pursuits, keeping other people out of the way. We absolutely know that it makes a difference. We hear it. We get the police congratulating us for the work that we do, and it's just incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, great. When I first met you, I assumed that all CCTV cameras were just linked back somewhere and that everyone can watch, but they're not, and that's what you guys do and enable. How many cameras, like say in New Zealand at least, are you guys connecting back to your SaferCities grid system?
I think now we're heading up towards over 6,000 cameras up and down New Zealand, and that's growing all the time.
Yeah.
I think there's somewhere north of 8,000 New Zealand police that can log on to the VGrid SaferCity platform and look at what they're allowed to look at. And I think we've mentioned in a previous podcast that the platform's very strict in terms of what they can see, everything being logged to keep the Privacy Commissioner happy. But at any one time, there's probably 200, 250 police access in it. So it's not,
amazing.
they're not on the system the whole time. They're on it when they need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who gets to make that call on who gets to see what?
The asset owners of the cameras themselves. So the data that comes from the camera is the camera owner's data, and they get to decide whether they want, carte blanche, everyone in New Zealand Police can see it, or just people in Auckland, or just people in Invercargill. So that's their decision because it's their asset.
So great. So like people in my community, as a member of society, the business owners in my community who are sharing their cameras are the ones who get to dictate what the police see, not the police.
Correct.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yep.
Because that's probably not what you'd typically think. Once the police have it, they have it. But that's not how it is.
No. And so the police are very grateful for the ability to be able to see that visual information to make a better deployment decision. But it's ultimately the community that are sharing that visual information or pushing that visual information into police so they can both collaborate better together. It's simply a way of prioritising better.
Yeah.
So I see it, this is a very crude analogy that the police probably won't like me saying about, but if you think of ordering a taxi on a Friday night and there's 20 people making a phone call and there's only 5 taxis to deploy, it's a little bit like that in a busy time in a police communication centre. There are simply too many jobs coming in, not enough police to deploy, so they have to make a priority decision, and the visual information often really helps with that.
Yeah. Do you think that's, for people listening, thinking that my safety is getting, like there's a weighting put on my safety, do you think that having this ability to do that actually makes them able to serve more people because they're able to make that decision? Is this helping them do a better job? Even though, as a person, individual, I might think, well, why am I not as important? Yeah,
it is a good question. I've just actually forgotten the police term for it, but in terms of serious potential injury, they have their way of prioritising based on the health and well-being of the victim or the potential victim, and often if they're just listening to someone on a phone who may be under the influence of alcohol and who may be exaggerating, it's more difficult for them to make that call. Yeah. So it's, as with everything, it's not one technology other. It's the blend of the phone call. It's the blend of the video that enables them to prioritise. But they do have to prioritise. They only have limited resources. Yeah. One of the things, with Mike Bush, the ex-police commissioner on our board, is they're a lot better now at forecasting when issues might happen and the areas that they may happen. and getting ready to deploy faster and in a more suitable way to prevent the crime happening in the first place. So this is just another tool in that arsenal to help them do that in real time.
Yeah, fantastic.
So
it really means that like your, SaferCities is a real integral part of this public safety response. Does that ever stress you out a little bit? Does it weigh on you having a company that's so integral as part of the public response?
We're very lucky that we've got such an awesome CTO, Chris. So the platform is so resilient. I think I can remember 1 or 2 times when it's had some quirks and gone down. And so that feels pretty good that we're reliable and resilient. But there's a lot of things in the equation that we don't control. We don't control other people's cameras. We don't control some of the network links from their cameras into the VGrid SaferCity platform. So we can't control everything, but it's still amazing how reliable it is, and that it's there when they need it. And if you look at what we're doing compared to what was there before us, so the community have always wanted to share visual information with police. If you go back to the UK, they were doing it in the 60s and 70s. We're just making it easier, faster for them to access it, more reliable, more private, more authentic in terms of who can access it, and more logged. So there's a whole lot more of compliance and privacy built into VGrid SaferCity platform than the traditional ways that it would happen, and we're fairly proud of that.
Yeah, amazing. When we spoke previously, you told me a story, the initial story about, you seen something happening that if they had this system, they would have been able to help solve. Do you ever sit back and review that and think, what you've done and what you've created and the impact it's had on New Zealand since here? And you've obviously still got a long way to go as a company, but like, are you pretty proud of where it's come to, and do you think you've achieved what you set out to achieve originally?
We really are proud of it, and I still think of that first video that I saw. I think I mentioned in the previous podcast that I've seen far worse than that now, unfortunately. So that stuff's still unfortunately happening, and we know we make a difference giving police access to it. But the world's a big place, so there's more to do. The journey's not over yet. We're loving how the platform's evolving. We've got customers now that essentially are paying for us to make the platform better and better all the time, and that's very rewarding in terms of a funding model, because we don't need external funding. We've got our customers funding us to help us make it better. It's rewarding, but there's a long way to go, and it's a big world.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked before about police, getting that feedback from police about you guys doing a great job. Is there any, what's some of the best feedback that you've gotten that you've said, as a team, you said, we nailed that?
I had some the other day about a protest. So there's things that a police aren't allowed to say, but they'll just say conceptually it made a real difference in an environment, and I can't tell you what the details were, Scotty. But there's been times we have a product in VGrid called Glimpse, which essentially enables someone to allow the camera on their cell phone to be shared with police in a real-time way. And there was someone driving on the wrong side of the road down the bottom of New Zealand, and someone rang 111 and shared that. And because of that, the police were able to deploy in a way to prevent that becoming a head-on accident. So we constantly hear that we saved some lives last weekend because of VGrid SaferCity platform, and that's really all we want to do. That's the whole point of it. So
it's amazing.
It's rewarding. We love it.
And I guess from your perspective, you think pushing right to the line of where the Privacy Act sits is the best thing to do, and that if you were in government, you'd try to get some of that rid of some of that red tape to get to there faster. I
think it's a healthy debate to go is you're keeping within the privacy legislation, obviously, and never crossing it. So the Privacy Act in New Zealand is very good. The Privacy Commissioner and the Deputy Privacy Commissioner I know, they're great people doing some good stuff and just keeping everyone honest. So I don't see anything wrong with where it is at the moment. I don't see anything that I would suggest gets changed, certainly not in New Zealand. Australia are rejigging theirs at the moment. which is good. So, but I think it's always good to debate it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I think what sometimes doesn't get reported is exactly what's going on out there, and it's not quite as nice sometimes as some people think. So I think it is still good to reflect on both sides of that equation.
Yeah, and on that, on being what's reported, like, you know, ram raids are all through media and stuff
Yep.
like that. But like as you just said, not everything that is being reported should be
Yeah.
things should be reported that aren't and things.
Yeah.
So how do you think the media plays into helping with this and communicating the right ideas of what actually needs help?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's two sides of the media. I think they do report on what's happening with the ram raid situation. They also report on maybe mistakes that are made in public safety, or their perception that mistakes are made in public safety. So sometimes I get a little bit disappointed with the media for that, and probably won't win any friends saying that. But yeah, I think people need to know what's going on out there to protect themselves and to support each other to prevent this. I'm hearing that ram raids are starting to die down. So a lot of them are carried out by the juveniles because the consequences aren't as dire for them as they are for adults. But it's almost like they're getting a little bit sick of them, getting a little bit tired. I think there's more bollards in front of shops now, so it's getting harder. It's getting harder for them to do them. So that can only be a good thing. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, cool. And lastly, as we wrap up, so with CCTV, like, is it going to be able to, with all this AI technology and other social media platforms, all this stuff sort of building, do you think it'll ever come a place where you can prevent crime due to all of this, or is it just always going to be a piece of the puzzle?
I think it's always going to be a piece of the puzzle. So it's just one more sensory input to make it a better deployment decision, and I guess to position for perception that public safety is there, and maybe it's not a good time to commit a crime, or if a crime has been committed, then how to limit injury of police and public safety officers and the public. So it's just a piece of the puzzle at the end of the day.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for your time today, Scott, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, Stanley, and thanks for listening.